Three, two, one. Let's go! Happy hour, night 2 of SEG of 2019, Skippo. We are here.
Last show of the day.
Last show of the day.
And we saved the best for last, especially after Ron. So this is good.
It was the episode after Ronco from Faskin Oil and Ranch. We are now pleased to introduce to everyone Richard Pagel, working the Permian Basin. And he has some very, very interesting things, and we will get to those things. But first, Richard Pagel is a great friend of mine and someone that absolutely inspired me from the first day we met. Without question.
A friend, for me, a mentor.
Yep.
He was our industry advisor for our IBA team. The IBA team, first one in UTPB history. Repeat that to win the Southwest section, and this man had a huge part of that.
Huge role, man. And I bring that up because it's important why we're all here and we have beers in our hands and that we're drinking and we're listening to this. We're at a society where we meet individuals who have common interest, common curiosity, and we inspire each other to do better. It's as simple as that. What a life we get to live, man. And I just can't thank you enough for that friendship. And I'm glad we're going to move into now what Richard Pagel really did. How did you start?
Well,
Get close to the mic, dude.
long story.
So
I had a pretty different background from most geoscientists. I undergrad UT, started off computer science, didn't like programming.
Hook 'em horns.
Geology was cool. I could make money, but really had no drive, no inspiration. I just knew that Texas was better than A&M, so I decided to go to Austin.
That's all interesting. Why was his introduction way better than mine was? What do you mean influential, inspiring?
But it translates because it happens in the industry, man. We have Aggies. You go to, like, I don't know, an event in town that has most geoscientists. There's always either a Texas Tech or an Aggie joke, and the crowd will go wild. It'll be divided. Aggies and Texas Tech and UT and all this stuff, man. It's funny how that stuff links up. It's like a cultural thing.
It is, yeah.
Competition.
Deep.
140 years?
Yeah.
Damn near. Yeah.
140 years
Rivalry.
of fighting each other. That's when Texas A&M was truly just an ag school.
Yeah. They didn't even allow. It was all male, all cadets until the end of the 70s, 80s.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And then they started
long.
letting females in, but they still had to be in the Corps. Then eventually they just said you could just be a student. But for a long time, you had to be in the Corps. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting history. Interesting. So processing for a long time with Pagel, you dive into that.
Yeah. So I started off actually really early on in the microseismic world.
Yep.
So my first taste of the industry, more or less, was unconventional exploitation, technology being used to try to figure out.
Speak up, man.
Trying to figure out all these kind of problems that engineers were having with their completions. That's what microseismic was first kind of used for.
Right.
Back in 2008 when I kind of started, everything was very early on. Very basic,
right? Theory and all of it. Huh?
Yeah, it was all not. I don't want to say BS, but a lot of growing pains. But and there still are. It's still new technology, but it introduced me to the unconventional world, and I've been there ever since. So my whole career has been in unconventionals.
Right.
And I've had a very not unique, but a very well-rounded look between completions, engineering. I jumped over to CGG.
Right.
I was in the reservoir characterization world, doing all the high-end QI work, trying to integrate the geomechanics with the rock physics.
I didn't realize that much of the QI.
Yeah. So I never did actual processing in the imaging sense.
Right.
It was taking multi-client data or whatever, and moving it to the rock property.
Right. An unbelievable perspective, dude. If I can just recap what you said. You're on the processing service side while the unconventional play is developing. While the operator is figuring out what's happening and the responses of this, at the same time, the service providers who are giving them the data is also doing the same thing. You are truly just an integrated position in the sense of service and operator in the unconventional world.
Yeah, trying to figure out how to use technology to help out operators. That was
8 to 10 years long. What did you do that for?
It was 7 years between Pinnacle, Halliburton, and CGG. But yeah, but my expectations from spending 7 years in technology, right, trying to figure out what operators are thinking, how they're using it.
Right.
Going to an operator that's actually very successful, seeing how they're using it. Yeah, almost 2 years working in Eagle Ford, 2 years in Midland.
Oh, that's right. That's where we cross paths, man.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I spent 2 years working Delaware Basin, so I
That's
got
right.
totally immersed in the West Texas Permian Basin culture.
Right. Get on that mic, dude.
And just fell in love with it. Very uncomfortable right now.
Let me jump in with a caveat real quick.
Let's do this.
I don't know if you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. I'm curious though, since you did all that work with the service companies and then made the switch over to being an operator, when people were coming in and giving you results, or you were reviewing those results, what percentage of the time were you like, okay, this was a good delivered product? Because a lot of people have no idea what they're buying.
Yeah,
They're
so
just told that they're supposed to buy it, and they believe whatever halo these guys
Yep.
come up with. I'm not going to say what company it was, but
That's
a company.
real, man. That's
that-
absolutely real.
It's
100%.
very common. Very common. It happens in every one of their service lines, and between drilling, completions. I mean, everything that uses technology. So they're going to pay for the horsepower. They're going to pay for, equipment. But the one running the interpretation. They're the ones.
Really?
They're collecting the data. They're driving the vendor to collect data a certain way. They don't care what the vendor thinks about the data. Right. It's their ideas.
Wow,
it's
nice.
just they don't have a frac crew, right? So they got to pay somebody
Right.
to pump.
Right.
But they don't care what that company has to say about how to frac.
You
right?
pump to our design. We're not pumping your design.
Well,
and
of course.
it crosses over to the seismic world too. The kind of for seismic processing. I mean, they're the ones driving the processing flow, right?
Wow.
And they're not going to budge until the product
Wow,
is what
dude,
they
that's
want.
So badass.
And I've taken that to where I'm at now, but where I'm at now is more like the traditional. Right, to kind of trust the vendor. Right, kind of give them
The benefit
right,
of the doubt.
Yeah,
or-
so I'm fighting a battle both internally and
Stick with
externally
that.
with that kind of mindset.
Yeah.
wow. Dude, so if I could recap that was a
dangerous,
phenomenal
brah.
question.
That's what I do.
Dangerous, bruh. That was a phenomenal question because, dude,
And I think it helps both the operator, the
Right.
customer, and the
the service
provider, because the customer is driving the product. They know
Dude.
more about the geology, what it's going to be
Right.
used for, right? So if they can convince whoever's doing the work to do it a certain way, it's going to
Right.
actually help their understanding of
to
the workflow.
recap my understanding of that is you blurring the line between service and operator. They're blurring the line better than most.
And maybe too much, but
That sets up the drill down section of this perfectly, which is we're going to go into David Ramsden Wood on LinkedIn. This guy has unbelievable knowledge of the overall industry, and he just says it like it is. He calls himself cynical, and he just puts it all out there. Everyone responds to it. Like, this guy's posts are always blowing up, and everyone's
but-
seeing it. Certainly everybody here that's...
Regardless, if you agree with what he's doing or not,
Right.
it's starting a discussion.
It is,
right.
man,
It's
and
starting
a really good
whether
discussion.
whether that interpretation on his end falls on his face. Like, look at this: 97 comments, 97 professionals
Yep.
chiming in.
Right.
Either agreeing or being like, "No, you're
Right.
totally wrong." You're
Someone said it was insightful. For some reason, you get those options to say why you like it, and
right,
they
look at
say
this,
it's
look at
celebrate, and that it's insightful, and
that what
they
the
like
light bulb
it.
is?
Yeah,
Oh my
insightful.
gosh.
Dear
Oh,
Reservoir Engineers,
changed
you
my
know
life.
it was coming, is what it says. You are the steward of asset value, and since it's just you and me talking, can we be honest? The gig is up. Spacing tests are coming out, and it looks bad in the Bakken, Stack, Eagleford, Midland, Delaware. Everywhere is showing significant EUR degradation, right? Degradation because you recommended drilling wells too close together. Increased density has massively hurt EURs per well, and both know B factors are lower and terminal declines are higher. This is where he's calling out reservoir engineers. And Pagel, in your opinion, how do you feel about that comment? Because you are the operator that's drilling those wells.
yeah. So I think he's right. There's obviously a lot of different perspectives internally in companies, and they all work differently.
Yeah.
I think he's wrong when it comes to right, the reservoir engineer. Right, when he capitalizes the you recommended drilling wells too close together,
Uh-huh.
right? It's normally an integrated decision. You have the geologist, and you have the
Absolutely.
petrophysicist, and you
And
have
he-
you
which
have
we all knew was
everybody
coming.
Yeah, you have
We-
everybody who's kind of looking at the data together,
And saying,
and
"Look,
companies
this is
that are doing it the right way, right?
That's right.
And they're actually coming to these conclusions based on what the data they have. But there are probably companies out there that aren't doing that are engineering basically. I mean, the whole factory engineering terms you hear, I mean, it comes from somewhere, right? It actually exists. There are
Yeah.
companies out there that are basically blindly trusting reservoir engineers using these box models with no heterogeneity, and
So
kind
he's
of just
picking on a part of the industry that absolutely exists.
and assumes that everybody's doing it the same way.
And maybe doesn't assume, but is just calling them out in
Yeah.
a professional way, I would say.
But
And
what do you do? I mean, do you not test the closer
You have
spacing?
to.
Yeah, that's
You
the
have
thing,
to,
right?
'cause
Like,
if we didn't do that,
Yeah,
then
these-
everyone would be talking about that's what we need to do.
yeah.
Yeah.
We got to get closer.
But then, and to be fair, there have been companies that have had success downspacing, right? I mean,
It works in places. I mean,
yeah,
just
it does.
yeah.
It does work in places, but figuring out where it does work and where it doesn't work, I think that's where he's hitting on, right? Because there's companies that are trying to downspace, and then they just threw $9 million down a hole, which is also a lie. It's probably more like $11,
Right.
$12 million.
I think investors need to be better educated and do better due diligence
Absolutely,
when they're looking at this data and
they
make
trust
their
us, though. It's our professional responsibility to tell the investor that you are trusting our decision, you're trusting our philosophy of breaking this problem down, and we're going to provide you great returns on your investment. That is our responsibility as a professional that they invest in. It is against our interest
No.
to waste money. They kind of know that.
But it's also a conflict of interest, right? Because you want them to give you money. So if they're like, we really want to push this idea, they might not be the most experienced. You might give them your opinion, but at the end of the day, they're the ones that are paying you, right? They're the ones that are
100%.
they're the ones that are funding these projects. So they get the last word
Sure.
at the end of the day.
Sure. And some of these companies probably very sure. But where I was
well, I don't know if it's last word or they just pull their money if you
they
don't.
pull their,
yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
they're
one
like,
or the
no,
two,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You need 100 million, we only have 50, and then you got to figure it out. Now, the point I was trying to make and your perspective on all this is the reservoir engineers, man, when you're sitting in that room and there's a fleet of reservoir engineers and a fleet of geoscientists in the room, and we're making the best decision we can possibly make for the company and for the results for each individual person. We want bonuses. We want that to happen. What are they like?
I mean, so the ones that I work with, they're actually doing a really good job coming to the geoscientists and trying to understand the spatial heterogeneity and what
Nice.
makes things work.
So you're showing them
They're-
cross lines of
Yeah.
seismic. You're showing them all this stuff, of course. What do they say it is? They need to get better on completion. Someone's pounding the table saying we got to spend money here or there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not completions. I mean, for now, I wouldn't say the industry's kind of like given up, but I mean, there's kind of like a base completion that everybody's kind of using more or
Right.
less.
Sleek water 100 mesh, right?
Yeah, 100 mesh, a certain rate, kind of cluster spacing is kind of, everybody's kind of coming together, merging to a single point.
We're not going to run around and just kind of chase what the market's doing. If you give yourself a second to step back and watch,
Yeah.
over a 5-10 year period, you'll learn a lot more than if you're trying to move every month and try to keep up with the fancy
Huge,
stuff.
yeah.
But that's not a critique more than just a private
Well, not a
company
critique at all.
that
'Cause
has
these
the
guys are
ability to
figuring
do
it out on day to day, right? And they
That's
have different
right.
spacing, so they're
I mean, you're
affecting
dealing.
their reservoir
you're dealing with
differently.
two different animals here, right? You're
Yeah, the
talking
economic
about
models
what
are
I mean,
different.
500,000 gross acres, about maybe a little bit less than that, versus this privately owned ranch where you own 100% of the minerals, 100% of that. Because I mean, we're dealing with NRI differences too. I mean, that's a
Do you
huge
know
But
what-
it shouldn't, right?
Do you remember
At
what
the
a
end of the day,
CDC
sure.
is?
I'm sorry?
Do you remember what a CDC is?
It's been a minute. I don't miss
Wow.
chasing
For,
those
for
things.
everyone in the audience, the CDC is a continuous development clause.
Continuous development clause that's happening in the Permian Basin. You drill one well, you have to be back on that
Well,
lease,
yeah.
back around
Yeah.
that
180
well.
days.
180 days.
180
there's-
days.
there's no
60
time to
days,
understand.
Doing it
60
again.
days
$12
from rig
million
release.
in the ground.
Before you get production data.
Yep.
Sometimes, depending
Fasken
on
is
how-
still trying to help the New Mexico community just like everybody else. So, yes, I'm still very much having to deal with all of those CDCs as well. So, yeah.
Okay, I buy it. All right, let's slide up to completion. He has a completion comment.
P-Dog completion.
Completion. It's a little bit shallower, not much shallower than where we were.
Dear completions engineers.
I don't
There
like
we
his
go.
hashtag. The hashtag bothers me.
Hashtag hot takes.
I don't like it. No, hot take of the day.
All
I
right,
don't like
what is Skipper? What is this one saying?
That's not a good idea. Dear completions engineers, if you are the boss of one, please stop reading. They are scared of you, but they need to hear this. Volume 1. All right, so this is a multi-part series. I like to blame the C-suite for the decisions companies make, but it is the job of technical people to evaluate data and give analysis. Unfortunately, the current paradigm is that fear of unemployment exceeds the fear of
We
destroying
were just
capital.
talking about that.
We did. As a matter of fact, you guys should have been here. It's time to end the cycle of the status quo. Let's start with coil tubing. Seriously, it's 2019. That is a $300,000 bill to drill plugs that may or may not have the flow capacity 6 months from now to change the non-IP rates, dissolvable sleeves, large flow-throughs.
Dude, and then he goes wireline, tracers, microseismic. He calls it all out.
Well, let's talk about microseismic. Are you kidding? We don't even know what cluster the fluid is going in. Frack rocks make oil.
Frack rock, make oil. It's like caveman.
Well, I mean, so we can hit. So for sure, I mean the plugs, dissolvable plugs are a big push right now.
Yeah.
And I mean companies are testing that, and I think
yeah.
coiled tubing. I mean, drill outs and all that aren't going to be happening in the next couple of years. I mean, there's huge strides in that. So.
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't know enough about completions, but there's slide and sleeve and plug and perf and coil. I mean,
we're not Airtech, so we're not really going to offend too many people. But I mean, these different methodologies, right? They all say they can do something that the other can't, right?
Sure.
And what he's basically saying is none of that really matters. You're breaking rock, and that's what matters the most.
That's all. At the end of the day, that's all we know we're doing.
What's your thought on that, Troy?
Hot take of the day, Troy. What's your hot take of the day?
Hot take of the day. Okay, hot take of the day. Hold on.
All that matters is you put the well in the ground and you frack it. That's all that matters.
Ladies and gentlemen,
That was probably the most triggering question you could have asked.
Pagel, you're killing me. You cannot do that. It's not working. You can't do it. It's not how the geology is working. It's not what geochemical analysis are telling us. It's not what the complexity of the rocks, the geology, is telling us to do. That is telling us to be way more precise. It matters where we land, and it matters that you have frac barriers, without question. Without question, that matters. But what matters more is what the rocks are saying. When you look at the cuttings and you look at whole core, and not just a K-Phi relationship, you have to look at this stuff geochemically. You have to use rock eval paralysis, and you better have a scientist who knows geology. You need a structural geologist, because that's the only medium between the geology department and the engineers. Structural geologists like Skippo, his thesis explains what's happening. There's preferential movement in the system. There's preferential things happening in these reservoirs, and it's predictable. But you need a good structural geologist, and it breaks in a specific way, just like our fracs break the rock in a specific way. So the reservoirs engineers can understand why it's important to know that. And then match that up with geochem, dude. It's going to say that this is a terrible idea. We're wasting a ton of energy outside of our reservoirs in the unconventional. That's the facts. Absolute facts. That's my hot take of the day on completions, Pagel. Thanks for calling me out.
That's a nice plug for Skippo.
Hey, dude,
Hey,
Skip's
Skippo.
thesis is going to change the world. Matt Scipione's thesis from UTPB on structural geology of the Midland Basin is going to change the world when it comes to
Give me 10 years.
Let me see that shit first.
Give it 10 years for everyone else to catch up.
2
Let's
weeks.
go,
I got you,
Skippo.
dog.
2
I got
weeks.
you, dog.
2 weeks.
I got you, dog. Coming
right.
in hot.
And Ronco is his advisor.
So just to
Skip's
put
right.
everyone,
Good luck.
just to give everyone in the audience an idea, this guy's going to be sitting there grilling me for the hour
I'm gonna
after I'm finished.
destroy that thesis.
Dude,
Dude.
the
you're
thesis
not.
You have no
is
idea.
going to be awesome. It's a great segue, though, into Ramsden's. So let's go move up to geoscientists. Here's what Ramsden has to say about geoscientists. Let's load it up. Scroll it up. He calls out geoscientists and all these rants. He talks about every aspect of our business and what we do. This is what he says about geoscientists. Come on. Dear geoscience community, I feel awkward. I don't know how to say
Pick
this.
the longest post of all time.
We've been together for a long time. We've also
It's
grown
really just
so
coming
much.
from his diary.
That's why it hurts me to say it's not me, it's you. I'm sorry. That's what he says. Such a shock, right? How can I not think exploration is fun? Prospecting, finding new plays, doing science, getting core, licking rocks. Our industry needs this. Unless you are offshore or international or have a lot of personal money to drill your own prospects, no one cares. That's what he says. No one cares. You're not providing any real value, is what he's saying in that post, that little rant. All the cheap oil has been found in this area, or this era. That's why oil production was declined until the shale revolution. Bottom line, public companies can't do exploration in the U.S., and they shouldn't. Doing exploration would be like Tesla building a combustion engine. Exactly. That's a good one. And then he goes on about, what does he say? Bakken, like Eagleford, yada yada, economic questions to say the least. For the point, so like a Band-Aid being ripped off. Let's do this.
He misspelled Eagleford, by the way.
And he says
There should
geos.
be
All
a space
credibility
between
is
that.
gone.
Eagleford spelled wrong. You're calling out geologists, and he's basically saying we're just helping with geosteering, and it's fun. So, but geoscience is coming back without question. Geologists are going to start coming back because that's what built this whole thing. We now have a new tool called geochemistry and understanding what's going on when you match that up with rock eval paralysis and this thing we call kerogen. Very interesting things taking place. It's a dynamic system that's incredibly complex. Geologists are coming back, and we have value. So my post back to him. Let's scroll down. Scroll down. Here's my post. Go to the post or whatever. Yeah.
Oh, you commented?
Oh, yeah. Here's what it says. Here's what it says.
Scroll down.
Come on, Pete.
Load more comments. Load more comments. Right there.
We have 1 minute to get through this.
There it is.
Perry, you gotta be kidding me. Perry, you gotta be kidding me. The Google machine.
You have one job.
There we go. There he is.
All right, comments.
Load the comments. Slow down. I know you're nervous, P-Dog.
No whammy, no whammy, no whammy, no whammy, no whammy.
There it is.
24 likes. Look at that.
There's nothing better than a lick of a good carbonate from 280 million years ago, packed with fossils. It's got to be on the bucket. It's a bucket list thing. You have to I said you have the attention of the world, man, and with it, you are serving up some delicious humble pie for the energy industry. Hashtag not biased, but biased. Advancements in geoscience is our only hope to get better in this industry. Modern technology and brave engineering has got us to this point we call the unconventional resources. But let's be honest, today, we're hopeful in prayer and doubtful in meetings. The story is in the stones, amigo. It's an incredible challenge, and we are willing to give. We're not willing to give up, and we will not fail. The industry will not fail. It never has. We've been under all kinds of pressure in the history of the oil and gas industry. There is no way we fail. So we're moving forward. The future is bright, David. We're enjoying this journey with you. Finally, we got Geoscience Post. You delivered flawlessly. Paradigms are shifting. Make way for the unknown. The story is in the stones. Period. That's a fact.
Amen, dude.
Amen, brother. Hell yeah.
For everyone in the audience.
Amen, dude. Oh, man. Anyway, so that's the end of Ramsden. I mean, he's saying how it is. It's the reality. It's this window of time we keep talking about at Icon Live.
This is the last take of the day coming from Ronco and Pegs, and then it looks like we got to get out of here.
This is it. We're killing the show.
So real quick, my perspective on this whole geoscience, not being important. From my perspective, coming in as a 22-year-old in the unconventional world, I think a lot of the problems we've had is the leaders that were drilling all these conventional plays, understanding how all this worked with conventional assets, right? They tried to take their knowledge and shove it into the unconventional space, and it just didn't work, right? So I think there was this period, the last 5-6 years, where there was uncertainty of how this is going to be applied, right, to our current problem, right? And instead of taking a step back and figuring out from scratch, we know the physics, we understand how all this stuff works on the very basis level, right? Come up with new ideas instead of trying to take old ideas and
plug them into a new model.
And one of the talks in my session today, it was talking about the rock physics models, and they were talking about Archie and all this stuff for water saturation, and how it doesn't work in unconventionals, and they're trying to tweak those models to make it work for unconventionals. Why not create new models?
Wow.
Based on what we're trying to do, right?
We're trying.
And we know the water's coming too, right? From production.
But not just Archie, but everything, right? Like all we do is try to take, even in the seismic world, we try to take this, this AVO stuff that was used for, DHI stuff, and we try to apply it to unconventionals without really thinking, is it even why are we doing that? Because, right, the people that were doing it before, that's what worked, right? So they figured it's just going to work here, right, instead of just rethinking the whole problem. And I think it's what we're doing now. We have this younger generation coming up that are basically being educated, right, and their first lick of the industry is unconventional. I think that's going to help boost everything. I think the next 5-10 years, all these problems, not all the problems, but it's going to help, right?
Yeah, totally.
Do you agree?
100%.
And we had a great
What was
talk.
the question?
Ronco. The next generation. Us.
You have one job, man.
Us. The question was about us. The question was about us. So we had a great talk with, just to wrap this up, it was about the concept of creating an environment that's got the philosophy from both the mentors and the mentees to get together and make that change, right? Everybody knows that's real, and we're trying to do that. All this stuff, we're all trying to do this, man. It's not like we're not. right? It's just we're here and this is it. We're moving forward. We're integrating better than ever. Communication between everyone is better than ever through goofy things like LinkedIn or whatever else, or this podcast. We're sending this signal out and people are responding, man. And that's what we're doing. And I cannot thank you guys enough to be standing behind these microphones, man, and meeting you from day one.
It's been a blessing.
Dude, our futures are bright, fellas. Skippo?
We